Hello, I am Disbrew, and today we have for you the Steam Roundup of 2021. This is their best of list, where they give all the statistics of various different things from games that made them the most revenue, to the most played, to when all the games were released, and it's all very, very interesting, because while most stores, actually, even the consoles and everything else, they really just hide away their numbers. It's like it's top secret. They don't tell you a thing. Steam is very open with this, to giving you live player numbers for every single game on their platform, and then they just rank all the games which made them the most revenue for the entire year. So you get a lot of numbers in this, but you get some huge surprises, especially when it comes to just where everything positions on the list. Like PUBG, it's kind of a game which I know exists. I know it was always popular, but I had no idea how popular it was until I started digging into this. So you definitely get some surprises as well as some of your big expected names. But the most interesting to me right off the bat was when games were released in 2020 and 2021. And you see 2020, and that was more a normal year. Yeah, there may have been a couple of things that were released because of obviously what happened. But there were still games that were mostly finished. Things were maybe delayed a couple of months, but most of the work had already been done by this point. And you see throughout the entire year, games released at the start of the year and just steadily throughout the year, and they're all out way before Christmas. So you get to November, nothing. December, nothing. One game each, not really much at all. Every game that wanted to be out for Christmas was already out by August, September, and October, and nearly every month there was more than one game released. Compare that to 2021, and it's entirely different. The start of the new year is just empty. Any game that wasn't out by October, they're just like, we'll just delay it a lot longer. We need more time, way more time. So there was months in 2021 where nothing happened and everyone was just bored. So if it felt to you like there was just huge areas of nothing this year, it's because there was. Then you had a bit of a surge in May, then just another huge gap. Not really much in August either. Then September you get a load. Everyone waits in October. That's when all the games were delayed. And then November goes insane with 5. More than any other time throughout 2020 or 2021. And I think this is just a sign that a load of games were delayed as long as possible, and then they were just released way too early. Like, by the time you get into November, you've either delayed that extra little time because you think you need just a bit more time, which is very rare, or you weren't delayed enough and you just wanted to hit Christmas, and so you released it on the last possible day. And for that, I think you have games like Battlefield, and judging by the state of Halo at the moment, I'd still include Halo in that as well. The big battles still don't work. I know a lot of people love that game, but when one of your entire modes, you can't even connect more than 2 games on the trot, it's definitely got some errors in it. I'd even include Call of Duty in this, because while I really like Vanguard and I thought that was really well put together, Warzone didn't release a map for 2 years, and then when it did, it was a complete and utter mess even then. So a lot of games probably should have been delayed even longer into the new year, into this like pretty lax area at the start, because if you delay it, you hit this whole sort of empty area. Now, I'm not sure if this is actually going to happen in 2022, because a lot of games were delayed until February, stuff like Dying Light 2, which I'm really looking forward to. So this may not hold into the next year, but yeah. While Steam like really congratulate November because it had 5 games released, I'm like, that's awful. This is far too much competition. It definitely hurt sales for some of them. And let's face it, there were games released that shouldn't have been and really just needed to be pushed into the next year. But when you get to the top revenue generated, I think there's some surprises. Yeah, you've got the expected ones. You've got Apex Legends, Dota, Counter-Strike. I'm very surprised by PUBG. Didn't know it had this kind of player numbers. But then I went to check, and you see PUBG is 3rd with 208,000 players. 363,000 peak. I had no idea it was this successful. Absolutely none. So now I know the player numbers. Really not surprised it's up there. But when I saw that, I'm like, what? Naraka Blade Pointer, don't know anything about it. Not my kind of game. New World really impressed me. I had a lot of streamer backing for the beta, but actually didn't expect it to actually carry on afterwards when the streamers all left. But it's really held its play as well. And I think it's now like, yeah, it's 8th on the list here. Then you've got GTA 5, basically been ported to my foot at this point, so I'm really not surprised about that one. Rainbow Six Siege hanging in there, almost free to play. It's like £7 entry. I think there's a free to play version as well. You just have to grind out the people. Always very, very popular. Launched to a terrible player base, but it's just grown over time and it stayed popular and it's there. Dead by Daylight and Destiny 2, probably 2 of my biggest surprises. Had no idea they'd reach the top, especially when you go and see their positions on the list. They're not in the top 10. They're not even in the top 15. You have to get down to 18 and 20th to actually find their player numbers, and yet they still come 11th and 12th on the most generated by revenue. So obviously they have a lot of people buying skins, battle passes, and that kind of stuff. And one thing you actually notice about games like Dead by Daylight is the player base is very, very consistent over this time. And where other games like Destiny 2, yeah, it has peaks and troughs, it kind of gradually declines over time. Dead by Daylight, no, just very, very consistent player base, plays it all the time, loves it, buys the skins. That's why it's up there. But then Battlefield, that's a game that strikes terror into the hearts of many, isn't it? This is a game which I've seen absolutely destroyed in the press. This is the game that's popular to hate. Everyone loves it. A lot of them didn't like Battlefield. You'll find a lot of them going, I'm not a Battlefield guy. Really hated that Battlefield. I'm like, well, yes, it's about to be expected if you're not a Battlefield guy. Kind of expect that. But either way, that's the kind of narrative that's driven around it, that everybody hates the game. And if you go and look at the charts, it's backed up. It's definitely backed up. 52,000 in this month, peak down to 15,000, and we are at 81. There was a little narrative going around that it was below Battlefield 5. Not anymore. That's got a very consistent base, though, so if this continues its decline, it may well drop down there. But it's very embarrassing to come out with a game as big as Battlefield, and in, just over a month, 6 weeks, you're down to 15,000 players and you're 81st. It's got to be embarrassing for them. Made them a lot of money, though. Made them a lot of money. 10th on the most generated for the entire year in a grand total of 6 weeks. You can understand why EA say they're sticking with this game, because despite all the reports, despite the numbers and everything else, they made the money. I don't know how else to spin it. So you may have a lot of annoyed players, but those players didn't refund, and that's probably what EA care about at this point. Also, one thing that surprised me in this, Halo, nowhere to be seen. And I know it's free to play, but so's Apex and Dota, Counter-Strike, so free to play, not really that much of an excuse. Those have much longer time in the actual year to make the money, though, so there's definitely that to take into account. But it did make me go looking for the numbers, and while you just look at the Battlefield numbers, 52,000 this last month, down to 15. Halo was at 147,000 earlier this year, and is now at 23 and at 47. So Halo could be in trouble as well. Look at that decline of players. Like, just compare it to something like Mountain Blade 2 Bannerlord. That game's been out for ages. Very consistent player base. Play numbers are increasing, if anything, especially over the Christmas period, whereas Halo is on a steady decline. So we'll have to see how Halo does. Obviously, with that, it does have more of a console player base, and you have Xbox Game Pass to add into account as well. But Halo, even without the PC player base, it's going to be massive on consoles anyway, so this definitely isn't the whole story. And it's just unfortunate we can't see those kind of numbers, or indeed Battlefield's what they are in console as well. Although, let's face it, Battlefield isn't going to compete with Halo on a console. Having a quick look at the other major successes, you've got It Takes Two, great game. Forza Horizon 5, I really enjoyed it. I'm not normally into racing games, but I wanted to try it with that one. And although I found Horizon 5 to be very bugged to get into it, when I actually got in successfully, I had a lot of fun, and it just throws stuff at you, throws cars, everything else at you constantly, and it just feels very rewarding, and it's just a fun, casual, relaxed game. I really had a lot of fun with that one. Back 4 Blood, really enjoyed. I didn't find it had too much longevity, though. That was my issue with that game. Well, I liked it at first. I just didn't have the staying power for me that Left 4 Dead 2 had, and I played Left 4 Dead 2 for years. Warframe, Addiction Machine, I don't think anyone's surprised by that. Final Fantasy 14, always hear good stuff about it. Apparently it's picked up a lot of people from WoW, so it's good to see that up there. I was surprised, actually, it can't compete with New World, because I had a lot of people switching over to Final Fantasy 14. But this is just revenue, not player base. But New World does have double the population of Final Fantasy 14, so there you go. And Warframe, the Addiction Engine, 66,000, coming at 13, but even though it's at 13, still loses out to two of the games which are actually beneath it. And I always thought Warframe was very successful at monetizing their games, but obviously not at quite as much as Destiny 2 and Dead by Daylight, and that really surprises me. Sea of Thieves, a lot higher than I was expecting, and I had no idea that was that popular either. And then you get into the more predictable names. Cyberpunk still hanging around, Civ 6, Resident Evil Village, Stellaris, Team Fortress 2 coming in here. Interesting how far down Team Fortress 2 is, because if you look at the player numbers, it's massive. 122,000, and it's always up there. Peaks around 128, never really moves, just stays in that 120k range. 6th on Steam, and yet it's all the way down in silver, down near the bottom of silver for actually revenue generated for Valve. I'm going to get into a lot of older games. One thing I'm surprised about in the bronze tier is The Forest is still hanging around, and so Star Wars The Old Republic. That was a game I played when it first launched, so much that I can barely remember the game, and yet here it is. It's still got a player base, still ticking along. Even down here, beating out games like RimWorld and The Witcher 3, which are two awesome games. So I'm quite impressed by that and how well that's staying around. I always find those things very interesting to look at. There's a perception among a lot of gamers that when they stop playing a game, the game's died. And it's just not true. Loads of people still have a very active player base, and games still make a lot of money long after most people have left, and you see that with games like PUBG and Warframe and everything else. So it's good to keep things in perspective, and it keeps everyone honest, especially when it comes to streaming TV shows. I think there's a lot of obscuring of data to make people think things are more successful than they are, and Steam just blows that all away, lays it all open, and everyone can see everything without any kind of falsifying of the data. I think it's very good, and I actually think every marketplace should do this. But until the day they do, unfortunately, we're left with Steam being the good guys of the PC gaming industry yet again. But for now, that's it from me. If you liked the video, press like and subscribe for more videos in the future, and let me know what you thought of the charts down below. Did you have any surprises? Let me know, but for now, that's it from me. I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.